and I'm going to be showing you some from the past. One of the things I've been involved with my fly tying career is setting up fly tying theaters and been involved with the many conclaves that fly fishing groups and clubs have over the country. And they really highlight tyers that you may not have ever met. And one of the best ones is ones in Idaho, both the Western Idaho Expo and the Eastern Idaho Expo, which is in Idaho Falls. They've been doing these fly tying get-togethers for a long time. We're talking over 30 years. So I want to do some highlights from some that I filmed in 2009 and 2010. And you'll get a chance to meet some names you know, and maybe some names you didn't know. And one of the nice things about tying at these expos is all the excitement and sounds of people going around telling lots and lots of fly fishing stories. Most of them may be exaggerated. But one of the nice things about the theater is you get a chance to listen to the tyers talk about their experiences and answer questions. I think you're going to enjoy them. We're going to start this week with several. We'll try to give you the most information. And I know some of you are going to say, wow, you know, I don't know about the materials. Well, these are really uncut. So, you know, you do your best on figuring it out. But I think you're going to enjoy the interaction with the crowd and with the tyers. And really uncut and I think extremely fun. Let's get going.
We have a fly on the Snake River in Wyoming. That's where I probably guide about 50% of my trips or so is on the Snake in Wyoming. A fly is called a hecuba. Its common name is the blue-winged red quill or great blue-winged red quill. Everybody up there just calls it the hecuba, which is its scientific name. The hecuba, they have them on the Lamar River Valley. On those streams there. I've heard about them on the Bitterroot, never experienced them on the Bitterroot. If you think hecuba, think brown drake. That's a good way to be thinking about it. Any type of brown drake pattern you use is one that you could be using for a hecuba, but they're very different type of bugs. The brown drake is a burrower. Your hecuba is a clinger. And they kind of habituate towards different stream types. That's a big reason why we really don't have brown drakes on the Snake River in Wyoming, because we don't have the right kind of substrate. We don't have that compacted silt that you need there. But regardless, really just think brown drake when you're thinking hecuba. I'm going to get started here. This fly here is based on a fly called a handy-downdy. There's a man back there in that corner with glasses on. His name is Ken Burkholder. He just tied prior to me. He's the guy that kind of developed this fly. I've had a lot of success in the one fly tournament up there. One of the years that's most memorable for me, though, is one that I didn't finish first in. I finished second. And a big reason I was at least came in second was because of this fly here. One of the guys in my boat fished this thing to absolute perfection. So we're going to get going. This is a Dairiki 135. It's really kind of a nymph hook, scud hook, more than anything else. And it's heavy. What I'm tying here is an emerger. You think with a heavier hook, this fly is gonna sink. We're going to be adhering some material to this that's going to allow it to float quite well. And the only thing that's going to float is what should be floating, which is the wing and somewhat of the thorax. So we'll get this started. And this is a bit of a variation on Ken's fly, but it has a lot in common with what Ken originally tied. Yes, Mr. Dennis.
We just got the forms. The whole theater is being filmed, 5 DVDs for the 2 days, and you can get them for $25. And these are the forms you fill out. They'll be ready on Wednesday. So if you're interested in getting one of these, I'm happy to give you one of these. Anybody like one of these?
Will they really be ready by Wednesday?
Yes, they will. They really will. Unless you screw up and I have to edit you out.
Well, don't think that won't happen. Okay, we're going to use a lot of this thread because we're going to be creating kind of a thread abdomen for this. And this is where the hang-de-down, the original hang-de-down was a thread-based abdomen. But I'm going to do it a little bit different than that original fly. If I end up blocking this screen with my shoulder, please yell out and let me know. I'm starting to fish a ton of emergers more and more, kind of over the past 10 years. This one is a guy named Scott Sanchez, who's, again, the guy that did the double bunting, that version that I just tied a bit ago. He ties another fly called an everything emerger, which is a really good fly as well. And that's based on the fact that emergers of almost any insect type have 3-4 different things in common. A trailing shuck, a compressed body, and just a jumble of legs. And that fourth factor may be a protruding wing. But I've taken those 3 to 4 concepts into almost every emerger that I'm starting to tie now. So we're going to get started by getting both a wing on here and a trailing shuck. I'm going to go ahead and bring this forward, and I'm going to tie the wing on right about there. Now, different kind of wing materials. This is what I prefer. This is bear hair. Burkholder just tied before me, tied a lot of flies for this seminar, for what he just did with bear hair. He's a big bear hair fan. He's the first person to turn me on to bear hair. A material that I can use, this is hard stuff to find, obviously. Another material you can use is EP fibers. But it's not necessarily the same. It comes close to doing that translucent effect of the wing that bear hair does really, really well. This stuff, the EP fibers, comes close to it, doesn't necessarily match it up, but if you can't find bear hair, this stuff, this EP fibers, is a good one to go for. So I'm going to get this bear hair off the hide. What I'm going to do is tie this in, not with the tips up, but with the base. These are going to be your tips. This is that translucent piece of the fly. That's about the size of the wing that I'm looking for. You can trim that down, so if you have to, go bigger before you go smaller. But that's about right there. When I'm doing bear hair for adult patterns and they're mayflies, I'll trim them at an angle. I don't necessarily do that for the emergent bug. Now, as I begin to come back with my thread, I'm trying to build up the thread body. I'm trying to make it somewhat bulky, but especially up here near the head of it. Because what you are trying to form is that compressed body. So I'm going to come back right about to there, and now I'm going to trim some of that bear hair off of there, hopefully without cutting any of my thread, which I tend to do even way the heck up here. Continue to come down, come back up and cover this. This is flat wax nylon here that I'm using, just because you can cover so much of the hook faster than you can with most other type of threads. end that right there. Give this another little nip. I'm going to come back to where I finished with my thread. Right about there. You can kind of see a bit of a compression, right? It's thinner here, a little bit thicker there, and a little bit thicker there. You can see I did capture some bear hair in that thread there. That'll all get covered as I bring the thread forward a bit more. Now I'm going to get the trailing shuck, which is going to simply be Z-Lon. I've experienced, or experimented, I should say, with some other types of material. I've actually used really super fine tentacle legs as trailing shuck material. And that works okay, but it's hard to beat Z-Lon. You see Z-Lon used with a lot of different flies. The Quigley Cripple, I'm going to tie a version of the Quigley Cripple next. That original fly of Bob Quigley's was, I believe he used Z-Lon. Howard Cole, who ties a lot of fantastic emergers up in my region, he uses a lot of Z-Lon. It's just a really good trailing shuck material. So that's going to be going on right about so. Now, the thing about the hecuba is it's a big fly. It is really a robust fly. The brown drake is obviously a big fly. Most of you guys have experience with brown drakes out there. The hecuba, you know, there are different subspecies and whatnot. There are some hecubas that are noticeably bigger than a brown drake. And I've heard some people describe some of these subspecies as stoneflies with mayfly wings. Some of those bodies can get extremely big. So the shuck itself is going to be big, and it's a clinger nymph, so it's a big flat body as a nymph. When it is crawling out of its shuck, that big fat body is basically trailing behind it. So you want to have a fair amount of this coming off of it. Now before I bring my thread forward, I'm going to tie in my ribbing material, and my ribbing material is just simple flat wax nylon. That's a bit darker. The banding on a hecuba, it's a light body. Let's say it's about close to this color here, and it has dark bands, and that's the segmentation that you see. So that going. Okay, now the idea here is to build that thread body back up noticeably and try and maintain that compression. And you know, that's looking okay there. It's not quite what I wanted, but that's going to be fine, I think. And then that son of a gun there, I'm just going to get this piece here in there because it's bugging me. This is flat wax nylon, so I'm going to give it a little bit of a twist. And right now my fingers are unfortunately coated in super glue from a little mishap I had in transit here. So see this, if this happens without tearing some of this nylon. Bring that to here. And now you're going to wind this son of a gun forward and try and maintain an even segmentation. Okay, and that's fair. That's not too bad. That creates your segmentation. Now this is the, unfortunately, this is the one fly competitor in me. I'm going to coat that body, again, with super glue. But there's some functionality to it. It doesn't just create this super strong fly that's going to last all day. The simple fact of the matter is that you got nylon back here. This nylon, you start to get the teeth of fish begin to nick it and it begins to fray, this stuff comes apart pretty easily. If you coat that with super glue, that's not necessarily going to be the case. Coat it with super glue and it's going to withstand a ton of strikes. Push that off there. I'm going to give this a nip because after I coat this with super glue, it gets put on the spindle to dry some. And then after I do that, I'm going to switch over to one that I've already have set up for the next steps. There'll be a bit of an opaqueness formed here with this as well. You've got a glossiness to it. But that happens with almost any type of adhesive you're using. I haven't really attempted to do epoxy on this yet, so I can't really tell you how well that works. So that coats that fairly well. And I'm going to set my spindle up here. And that obviously dries pretty quick, as long as I get it in there. Now I'll go to the other one that I have set up for us here. Now in my haste, you'll notice on this one, remember that compressed body? I didn't compress this one as well as I should have. What you see there is what you get. If you're tying this fly, think compression, and I would really stress that for almost any emerger that you are tying if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty. So there we go there. Now here's one of the key elements to this fly. It's going to be a little tag piece of foam. 2mm foam. This will be brown foam. And this I basically describe as almost a parachute support beam, basically. But that's going to be tied on here. What I'm going to do is give this a little bit of a trim at an angle on each side. So you almost form a V there. Like that. You guys all see that? Okay. Now I'm going to set that before I do. Let me get my thread tied on here. I'm going to switch over to thread, and I'm just using a clear mono here that I really like. So that's going to be placed right in at an angle like so. It's tied there. You want to make sure I can do this without hitting that little hook tip, because that will nick that clear mono in a way that's not so good. That's going to be your support beam. Get that a nip there. And now I'm going to get one of these. Get one of these on this side. Maybe shorten it down just a bit, and maybe like so. That's all you're going to really need. Now this fly is going to have some weight to it because of the hook that I tied it on. You know, it's a big stout hook. That's going to create a little bit of weight there. That thread body and that super glue that I used. This negates a lot of that. If you fish this properly, if you lay this down, if your presentation is just laying it down there and letting it drop as opposed to driving it in, this fly is gonna float exactly the way you want it to float. And I'll kind of show that here after I finish up. Okay, Now we're going to put on the jumble of legs. Now I've used, I might do this for this fly. You can use Zelon for your jumble of legs. You can use kind of these medium tentacle legs as your jumble of legs. I think I'm just going to go ahead and use Zelon. I think I kind of switch back and forth. Obviously, if I'm switching back and forth, if I haven't found one that works necessarily better than the other. The original, I think, and you'd have to ask Ken Burkholder, but I think the original had Zelon, or it may have had Arctic Fox. Ken, what did the original legs have on this? This handy-dandy, do you remember? Okay, yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to use Zelon. I'm going to use kind of some darker Zelon way, kind of the same as what we have with the shuck. And this is going to be creating some stuff that you have to kind of weave your way through to a certain degree. That's a lot of stuff there. I'm going to actually pull quite a bit of that out. And they're long too, so I'm going to take care of that as well. And remember, it's a jumble of legs. They don't have to be even. As these bugs are crawling out of that shuck, you know, they're getting a leg down, and another one's up here, and another one comes back up, and they're really working their tails off to get out of that shuck. At least I think they are. It sort of looks like when I've watched them. I don't get a lot of. I've seen maybe a couple of these actually crawling out of their shucks in my lifetime. Have it straight down. And I will trim those legs up here in a bit. We've got a couple more materials we want to put on here. We're going to get our hackle on next. And you can probably just fish this like this without the hackle. I haven't done that quite yet. This brown rooster. I'm not going to use a ton of this when I finally get it started. And last but not least, we're going to get our dubbing on here. And dubbing, this is just kind of a bleached ginger squirrel dubbing. Might be a bit too much there. And again, I got a lot of super glue on here, so what I like to do is put it on really just in bits and pieces, and then add as I go. And this kind of does add to the compression, because you're going to have a lot up there. I mean, you're thinking, well, you're just kind of forming a thorax, and thorax is only so big, but think about a bit of a build up there, kind of a bigger bit of a body up towards that thorax, because that's where a lot of the compression is happening. See how that looks over on this side. Now I'm going to come through, get those legs out of the way. That ought to do it there. I'm going to go around the post. Get some of that off. Back there, good. Okay, I'm going to give the legs a bit of a trim now. There's your legs. I kind of trim that right about where the point of the hook is as I'm looking at it. That's about all I'm going to need, which is actually a fair amount. That's going to come up and around to secure it. Okay, that's taken care of. Now you can take this down to your eye, whip finish it or half hitch it. You notice I use the whip finisher a lot. I'm actually going to half hitch this, so I don't get as much of that hackle in there, and then I'll apply some cement, or super glue, I should say. I just did 3 half hitches there. Give that a nip, and then you're really going to have to apply an adhesive there, because that will not hold. That's all you need there. You put that right up there at the top as well, and here at the bottom. And again, that's the one fly guy in me. Placing hackle, placing your adhesive at the top of the hackle and at the bottom if you're doing a fly like this. And if you're fishing a fly like this in the one fly, I can guarantee you any fly that's tied like this, parachute style, that has hackle like that, whoever tied it for you did a dab of super glue here and a dab of super glue at the bottom, and your guide in the one fly will probably be doing the same when he gets that fly onto your leader. So when this floats, basically, this is floating right like so. If that's your water, that's where she's floating, just like that. And you got those hanging legs and that trailing shuck, somewhat of a large wing, and I'm a very, very big fan of this fly. Okay, next I am going to get a fly tied up here. It's a mahogany emerger, and it's based on Bob Quigley's Quigley Cripple. That's a fly I didn't start using all that long ago.